Hello everybody and welcome back to Natalie Reads. My name is Natalie and welcome to my May and June wrap up. So I read a lot of books these last few months and I didn't do a wrap up for May because June was just not my month. I was trying to get back into booktube, but then life happened and school happened, and so I just didn't get to do a wrap up for May. So it's getting combined with my June wrap up. And because I have so many books to talk about, I'm not going to be able to give synopsis for the books. I'll just tell you the book, a little bit about it, like the general gist, and then what I thought of it, and that's the way we're gonna do this wrap up. So let's start with all the books I read in May. So in May I read 22 books, which is honestly not bad at all. I'm really happy with that. So let's go through the books. So the first book I read in May was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and in this book it's kind of a grumpy sunshine romance. So in The Fine Print we follow two characters, the guy who's like the CEO, kind of, not really, but like head of this amusement park, and then the girl works at the amusement park and they start working together on a project. I thought this book was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I just really didn't like the main character. I think his name was Ronan or something. He was just kind of an asshole for no reason. Like, we get reason, like he has this bad upbringing, like his father was not loving towards him at all and like bullied him for liking art, but he just like uses that as an excuse to be an ass. And it's like, okay, but no, that doesn't have to be why. You don't have to be one. You're choosing this. And like, Zara was fine. I feel like she didn't have as much depth to her, and she was just like, I'm happy all the time. So I loved this book, and then I hated the third act breakup, and I was like, okay, no, I don't want you two to be together. Fun fact. So yeah, this is the second book I've read by Lauren Asher that I was just not impressed by, so I don't know if I'll continue on. Next up, I reread The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas, and I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. In this book, we're following Catalina, who needs a fake boyfriend to bring to her sister's wedding in Spain, and Aaron, who works at the same company of her, volunteers to be her fake boyfriend. They don't get along, but throughout their journey, they start to flirt and maybe fall in love. I love this book. It's just so charming. I relate to Catalina. Like, it's weird being in her head, but I do relate to her. I think Aaron is absolutely amazing, and I completely buy the chemistry. I know some people don't like this book, but I do, so 4 stars. Next, I read Savage Lover by Sophie Lark, which is the 3rd book in the Brutal Birthright series, and this one has definitely been my least favorite so far. I think I only gave it like 3.5 stars. I just was not as invested in this romance. We're following Nero, and I forget the main character's name. Nero's part of like the mafia. She's not. I think they knew each other when they were younger. She runs a car shop and they start talking, and then eventually they start planning like to rob a bank. I enjoyed the plot part of the robbing the bank. That part was interesting, but the romance was just It wasn't really fleshed out. It was just like, oh, we went to school together and we both like cars. Okay, we're in love now. And I was just like, really? Because I'm not buying that. Like, I feel like there needs to be more tension. And it was also kind of annoying because the way the writing was done, you got both points of view, but like she would tell the same instance from both point of views. So it just wasn't the best book in the series so far, but I'm still enjoying the series, so I'll still continue on. This just wasn't a favorite. Next, I read one of the most truly bizarre books I've ever read in my entire life, and that is The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. I don't even know how to describe this book. This book is a Peter Pan retelling, and we're following our main character. Don't remember her name. She's like Wendy's granddaughter or great-granddaughter or something, and her mom's always been paranoid her entire life that she's gonna get kidnapped by Peter Pan like she was, and keeps talking about it, and our main character just does not believe her mom. But then on her 18th birthday she gets kidnapped by Peter Pan, and like things are evil, the Lost Boys are not nice, things are really dark, but it comes out that Peter Pan's shadow has been stolen and he thinks her family has it, so working together to find it. This book is reverse horror. It's really weird and I didn't necessarily enjoy it, but it wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, and I am mildly interested in reading the sequel, and I gave it 3 stars. But like, sure, it's like a fantasy romance, but I just felt like there wasn't really romance, but like it still was like a romance, but like the romance weren't like built up. You know, I didn't really believe that there was any like actual connection. You know. Next up, I read what turned out to be one of my most disappointing books of the year, or I don't even know if I can say disappointing because I shouldn't have expected anything from this, but it was one of my worst books of the year, and that is Battle Royale by Lucy Parker, and this is part of some series called Palace Insiders, but it's the first book. We're following our two main characters who are rival bakers. They have to work together on a baking show, but they're also both working to try to get the bid to bake the cake for the royal wedding that is about to happen. They don't like each other at the beginning. This is another Grumpy Sunshine, but eventually through working together, they come to fall in love. Okay, so I had a lot of issues with this book. One, the writing style was so weird, and it was just so slow to read. Like, reading this book was like so hard because it was just so wordy, and it didn't need to be this wordy. So it took me absolutely forever to read. The romance was fine. I didn't particularly like either character, and there was like a giant plot hole that they just like built up and then didn't talk about. They just left it there. And like the main plot was once again fine, but nothing in this book was like interesting. I don't even know why I finished it if I wasn't enjoying it. I was just like not interested in this book at all. I didn't care about the romance and I didn't care about the plot. So yeah, this book gets a lovely 2 stars from me. Not a good one, don't recommend. Another reread, and actually one of only 2 5 stars I've given out this year, is The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. In this book, we're following Olive and Adam Carlson. Olive is a PhD student, Adam is a professor at her university, but she's like not directly under her, so it's not like she's with her direct teacher. And they start to fake date because mutually beneficial to both, and of course they fall in love. I love this book. It's so charming. So one, the romance is absolutely amazing. You feel it building throughout the book, and then when the reveals come, it's amazing. And the science part of it are like fun too. It's not just the romance that's good, but the science stuff is also interesting in this book. It's just an amazing book. I love the romance, the writing. I think it's written really well. So yeah, I'm really excited to read the new stuff Ellie Hazelwood has come out with. 5 stars to this. Next was another book that I didn't love, but I knew I wouldn't love this book going into it, and that is This Lullaby by Sarah Dessen. So in this book, we're following our main character, Remy, maybe? Don't quote me on that. And the summer after her senior year of high school, before she goes to college, she starts dating this musician named Dexter. But things are like really complicated because Remy always said she would never date a musician because her dad was a musician, but then he like left her family and then died and she never really knew him. And yeah, it's basically just following her summer. I didn't like this book. This was a reread, so I knew I wouldn't like it. And so I'm not like saying like this is the worst book I've ever read. I knew I wasn't gonna like this book. I read it anyway. I'm not mad that I read it, I just have issues with it. So I didn't care about the romance. Like that romance was so boring. Dexter, you're supposed to believe he's this like really sweet guy, but like at the beginning he's like literally stalking Remy, and he like breaks into her window, and that's like the moment they get together, which is like really weird. And like she at the beginning of the book asks her out like the first time they meet, and she's like, no, sorry, I don't want to go out with you. But then he keeps asking her out. Like he doesn't know her yet, he's still asking her out every time they see each other, and he just doesn't get the hint. Remy, I mean, she's very immature. Like, she's like 18, so like, she's not like a 16-year-old. People are pretty mature at 18. Like, obviously not the most mature, but like, some of the stuff she was doing was just like, okay. And I also didn't like the way substance abuse was handled in this book. It very seemed to gloss over Remy's past addictions and possibly current addictions with drugs and alcohol. Very weird the way that was handled. And also, so in Sarah Dessen's books, you usually have like the main character and her relationship with her boyfriend or love interest, which I already established I didn't care about. And then also there's usually a huge emphasis on her friends, which like there kind of was in this book, but I didn't care because like she didn't spend enough time. Like 2 of Remy's friends were always like fighting and didn't get along with each other, but we never found out why that was happening, and that was never developed. And then there's some plot with Remy's mother and stuff that I also didn't care about. So yeah, I don't like this book. I gave it 2.5 stars. I'm moving on. So next up, I read 3 books in the same series. I started the Fallen Men series by Gianna Darling, which is like a dark biker romance series, and I read the first 3 books, Lessons in Corruption, Welcome to the Dark Side, and Good Gone Bad, and I enjoyed them all. I think I gave them all 4 stars, so pretty good. Definitely enjoying them, definitely going to keep reading them. Actually, I gave Welcome to the Dark Side 3.5 stars. So I like this series. I like the romances in all of them. I find them interesting. I think pretty much all of them are age gap and they're a little darker. I like the stuff with the motorcycle clubs. Pretty much the main complaint I have of this series is the dialogue is just so cringy. Like, it's horrible, and that's the only thing I can't get over about it. Is I really enjoyed the books and the romance, but some of the dialogue is just really bad. And I think my favorite of the three I've read so far is Good Gone Bad. I liked the romance in that one, and then there was also like a plot line with that one, which I thought was pretty interesting. I like these books, they're romance, but there's also plot, like motorcycle politics stuff that's happening. So I enjoy them. They're pretty good. I'm dragging my feet on continuing the series, so should probably do that. Then I reread the first two books in the Wayward Children series, which are Every Heart a Doorway and Down Among the Sticks and Bones. The Wayward Children series are like portal fantasies where each book alternates between a wider plot and then following people in their specific world. Every Heart a Doorway is fine. It's not the most interesting, and definitely on reread it's not as good because it's a little bit boring, but Down Among the Sticks and Bones was amazing. I love the characters we're following, Jack and Jill. It's really interesting seeing the world and everything. And so yeah, these were fine, like 3.5 stars to each of them. I enjoyed them. They weren't the best thing I've ever read, but they're short, which is nice. Next, I read Jade, Fire, Gold by June C.L. Tan, and I really enjoyed this book. So we're set in this magical kingdom and we're following two people. One is kind of a prince, but his family was like all brutally murdered by like his cousins, and so he's the only one that survived. And then we're following our other main character who's a magic user, but in this world, magic users are not allowed, and they start to work together to find stuff, and I really enjoyed this book. I really loved the world that was built and like the politics with the magic and then everything that was happening with like the politics basically. I don't know, I couldn't just say like the politics and like the castle and everything. I thought it was really interesting, really enjoyed it, and I'm not sure if there's going to be a sequel to this one, but I think there definitely could be with like the way it ended. And I thought the characters were all really neat. There was like a little romance, but it didn't like overshine the plot or anything. The plot was really interesting. There's like a magical artifact they're trying to find, and like there's some like moral stuff into it and like darker things. So I really enjoyed this book. I would definitely recommend it, and I also read it really fast. So yeah, I think I gave this like 4 stars. Next, I read the most effed up book I have ever read in my entire life, and that was Into the Dark by Dana Isley, which is serial killer and stalking romance. So I'll just leave that there. It was really weird. Romance was super messed up. So many trigger warnings for this book, so definitely look them up. I mean, it was just weird. I didn't like it. It was nasty. So yeah, I didn't enjoy this book, like 2 stars. It was seriously effed up though, so that's what it was going for. It was going for being a messed up book. I just don't know if I enjoyed it. Then I read The Last Ever After, which is the 3rd and final book in the School for Good and Evil series. Yes, this is the first book. I was just showing you a cover. So yeah, this book, I really enjoyed it. It's the kind of conclusion to the first trilogy in this world. It's a good conclusion. I enjoy it. Once again, there's character stuff where like the whole book you don't know which way it's gonna go. Lots of emphasis on friendship and the importance of friendship and what happens when friendships go awry. Very interesting. This is like a world where like 2 girls go to a magical world to train to either be a hero or a villain, and then things just spiral from that. So yeah, I give this book 4 stars. Next, I read one of my favorite books of the year so far, and that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. So in this book, we're following our main character, Anne, who had this romance with this sailor when she was younger, but her family was like, no, stop, you can't marry him. He doesn't have enough money. He's not important enough to marry. So she was persuaded by her family to not marry him. Many years later, her family has fallen into disfortune, and this guy is successful now, and they're reunited, and she falls in love with him again, but he may not be in love with her. And oh my god, this book was so good. Like, you spend the entire book seeing Anne just be like, oh my god, I made a mistake. How stupid am I that I let my family and my best friend tell me don't marry him when he's literally amazing. I should have married him. I messed up so bad. But like, we don't know if he reciprocates the feelings. But then there's like little moments, and there's this one scene with a letter near the end of the book that is just so good. So many parts of this book, especially towards the end, are just like so tension filled, and they're so good. Jane Austen is an amazing writer because not only did I love like the romance and the plot of the romance, the other parts of the book and like the other characters were interesting to read about as well. It's so good. I absolutely love this book. I seriously don't know which Jane Austen book is my favorite because like this was so good. It may be my second favorite now, but like nothing's gonna ever top Pride and Prejudice. Let's be real. But this book was amazing and I gave it 4.5 stars. Probably could have given it 5 stars, but I'm trying to be more stingy with my ratings this year, which is just turning into me giving no 5 stars. So maybe I will bump this one up to a 5 star. I don't know. Moving on to June, I read 27 books in June. So let's get on with those. First, I read The Truth About Forever by Sarah Dessen, which is a really sweet book about a girl whose mom is like really successful, her boyfriend's really successful. They put these pressures on her to also be like perfect and amazing. She doesn't necessarily want these pressures. She's dealing with a lot of trauma and grief from the death of her dad. She starts working at a catering company over the summer, meets people that she truly like bonds with and feels understand her. It's a really cute book. I feel like this book perfectly encapsulates the 3 things Sarah Dessen does in her books. She does romance, friendships, and family relationships. And this book, I think, perfectly does them. The romance is amazing. I love it. He's like a friend to her first, and then slowly becomes more, but then it backs away, but then it becomes more again. The friendships are amazing. Seeing her form friendships and meet new people who like actually care about her and actually like understand her and see that she just can't be this perfect robot all the time are really good. And then her relationship with like her mother and her sister, and seeing how like they're all trying to grieve her dad, but they're all doing it separately, and so they're all struggling because they're not depending on each other and using each other to cope. And yeah, it's a great book. I absolutely love this book. 4.5 stars. So then I reread The Maddest Obsession, which is the second book in the Maid series by Danielle Laurie, so that I could then read the third book, The Darkest Temptation, which is the third book. So I'm mainly just going to talk about the third book. I really like this book. We're following Mila, whose father is Russian. She's Russian. She doesn't know anything about her mother. She doesn't really know what her father does for work. And so randomly, one day, she decides, you know what, I'm going to go to Moscow. It's where I was born. I've never been. I want to go. She goes. Her father's like, no, don't go. The guy her father like has staying with her is like, no, don't go. Mila goes. In Moscow, she meets a guy, I forget his name, and she falls into maybe lust with him, but like not a lot happens, and then something major happens, which I'm not gonna tell you because then it would spoil, but just know the mafia kind of ish is somehow involved in this book. When the thing happened, I was unsure about how I would feel about the romance. I was like, oh my, this is a lot, and I don't know how the romance can progress from here to make it that I buy it. Man, I bought that romance. Yes, was it morally questionable? But did I buy it? Absolutely. I ate this book up. There are just so many little moments in this book that show how both characters are falling in love with each other despite not wanting to. They don't want there to be romance. The characters don't want to fall in love with each other, but they do, and it's amazing. I really liked it. It was a pretty good romance book. I gave it 4 stars. Morally questionable, yes, but you know what? I enjoyed it, so that's all that matters. And I read it super fast. I was like addicted to it. Like it was very compelling. I wanted to see where it went next. Next, I read Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, which is a political fantasy where we're following this family and everything that's happening with politics and who's going to be king and politics stuff. How many times can I say politics in this country? And I really enjoyed this book. I thought the character work was really well done. Each character that we read from is super interesting. The world, we haven't found everything out about the world. Like there's still some stuff I have questions about, but what I know so far is like super interesting. The world seems really interesting and immersive, and the politics and plot were like super good. I never knew where the story was going to go next. It took so many turns that I was just engaged the entire time. I really enjoyed this book. Like, I don't know, I would say 4.5 stars. It's not a 5 star, but it's pretty high up there. It was like super good and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. This is a super popular and highly recommended fantasy series, so I'm excited to finally be reading it. Then I read Boredom, which is the first volume of Death Note, and it was fine. It was intriguing and I'm excited to carry on, but it's not my favorite thing I've read, but I definitely will continue on. This is a shorter manga than the one I'm currently reading. I'll talk about it in a little bit. But I think it's still going to be good. I know people love this series. The first volume was like interesting and intriguing, so I'm going to continue on. It just wasn't my favorite thing I've ever read, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Praise by Sarah Kate, which was interesting. I don't even know how to describe this book. It was strange. It was somewhat enjoyable. I didn't love it. The romance wasn't my favorite thing. It never really felt like the two characters formed a really strong emotional connection with each other. So I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite thing. I haven't really been able to figure out my thoughts on this book since reading it. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever read. It wasn't the best thing I've ever read. I read it really quickly, but I don't know, some of the stuff just wasn't wowing to me. So 3 stars, not the worst thing, not the best thing. Then I read another really disappointing romance, and that's To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Mays, which is the second book in this love and hate duology. I read the first book, To Love Jason Thorne, earlier this year. I enjoyed it. I had some issues with it, but I enjoyed it enough that I thought this one was going to be really good, but it wasn't. So in this book, we're following a main character who moves in with her best friend, who's married to a movie star, and next door there's this hot, recently divorced movie star living next to them, and she literally spies on him. Like, I'm not kidding, climbs the fence, gets a pair of binoculars, and just sits at the top of the wall staring at him and his kid. It's so creepy. And then, like, she sees his kid drowning at one point. That makes him sound like a bad parent. He's really not a bad parent. But so she, climbs over the fence to save his kid, but then she doesn't understand why he's so creeped out and, like, wants to file a restraining order against her for stalking. Like, sure, you saved his kid's life, which was, like, good, and he should have thanked you more for that, but, like, you were literally stalking him? Like, I don't know. And, like, she just spent, like, the first half of the book, like, literally objectifying this man. And I was just like, okay, maybe not, because, I don't know, it's hard to buy a romance. Like, I don't know, like, once they actually started talking to each other and forming a little bit of connection, it was okay-ish, but it wasn't amazing, and I did not like this book. So I gave it 2 stars. Then I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which is about this guy who lives a decent life. He has a kid and a wife that he loves a lot, but then he's kidnapped, knocked out, and he wakes up. His life is not the same. He is way more successful than he was in his last life, and he does not have his wife or his kids anymore. And it's about him trying to figure out what happened. This book was so cool, so amazing. All the twists and stuff. It's like a sci-fi thriller book. Super good. I'm finding out that I do like science fiction. I just need to read more of it. The science in this book is, like, not confusing at all. It's pretty understandable. So yeah, I thought this book was a really good book. It's a really quick read, and I enjoyed it a lot. 4 stars. Then I read a sci-fi that I didn't love as much, and that's 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. I have not seen the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I found out that the book and the movie were written at the same time. That's the way I can describe this book. It follows, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe this book. It's weird. It's, like, about aliens and extraterrestrial life. The beginning was The second part was more mildly interesting, but still not super interesting. And the part on the spaceship was, like, kind of interesting for the first part, and then, I don't know, the ending was way too weird for me. Hated the ending, had no idea what was going on, and that definitely dropped the rating of this book for me. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but it's not anything I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about. Then I read The Powers of Hades by Eliza Reign, which is the first book in the Hades trial series, where we're following our main character, Persephone, who randomly is kidnapped kind of and told, hey, you're Hades' wife or ex-wife, but you don't remember any of this because you've had your memory wiped and now you're competing in a trial to become his wife again. And she has no idea what's going on. This book was pretty good. It wasn't, like, amazing. I gave it, like, 3.5 stars. I'm intrigued to continue on, but I don't, like, love the trope in fantasy romance of, like, they used to be together, but now she doesn't remember it because something happened and only he knows, and of course he refuses to tell her. Like, gets really mad whenever she, like, tries to find out more information, and then, like, gets mad at her for no reason, for, like, things that she did that she doesn't remember. So I don't know, it was, like, fine. The plot was pretty interesting. I liked the trials that she goes through in the book. It wasn't the best thing I've read, but, like, it was pretty good. And I'm gonna continue on with the series, so 3 stars. Finally, I read a 5-star book that I absolutely loved. This book was everything. I adored it, and that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I knew I would love this book. Going into this book, I knew it would have been amazing. From all the reviews I'd heard, I just knew that this was something that I was absolutely going to love. And I was right. So this book would follow Fitz, who is the bastard son of the prince in waiting. Fitz is raised by his maternal grandfather until like he's 6, and his maternal grandfather says, nope, I'm done with you. Drops him off at the palace. Fitz's father hears about him and is like, actually, I'm going to abdicate the throne. Fitz lives 2 more years in this really weird place at the palace where he's raised by the stable master. Then the king says, huh, you're going to become an assassin. And it starts to become an assassin, and things spiral. I love this book. So this book is very character focused. It's focused a lot on Fitz and his emotions, which are amazing. It's so well written. We see Fitz from like when he's 6 to when he's, I don't know, a teenager. I'm not quite sure what age he is, but it's just so good. The writing is so immersive and atmospheric. And then there's also a plot, which is super good. I love the plot points. There's a lot of twists near the end of the book, which I really enjoyed, and like seeing how Fitz was gonna get himself out of this situation where seemingly he was all alone. He had no one to help him with these situations, yet it was either find a way to get out of it or die. It was so good, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. Okay, so those were all of the like regular books I read in May and June. Now, the numbers do not add up. I said I read 22 books in May and 27 books in June, yet I have only talked about 27 books total. Where did the other books go? Well, the other books were One Piece volumes. I don't even know how many volumes of One Piece. Actually, I read 23 volumes of One Piece in May and June. That's a lot of volumes. I started the month near the end of the Alabasta saga, and now I'm near the end of the Water 7 saga. I'm not going to talk about the volumes in this video. I will say I am absolutely adoring One Piece. It is now one of my favorite series, and so good. I am making a video summing up my experience with One Piece. That'll be coming in like 2 weeks, where I'll talk about my thoughts more fully there. Just know that I'm loving it. I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about One Piece in a video where I'm already talking about a lot of other books, so I'm just making a video about One Piece. Those were all the books I read in the last 2 months. I had some good books, I had some bad books, and I had some in the middle books. So yeah, hopefully more good reading will happen in July. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Down below will be links to all of the books I talked about, as well as my Goodreads and my Instagram if you want to follow me there. Subscribe to see more content from me, and I'll see y'all in my next video very soon. Bye!